keep grinding, be patient, and don't give up.
What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC. We have right here on the line a very special guest, a recognizable voice, the voice of the National Wrestling Alliance, NWA, commentator Joe Galli. We're here to talk about his decorated career and, of course, the 74th anniversary show, NWA 74. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time in your busy day to chat with us. How's everything going?
Fred, it's a pleasure to be here. I love talking to people who always have an interest in wrestling. You know, things are really gearing up for 74. It's a really exciting time, not only for the NWA, but really for all of professional wrestling. I mean, I feel like there's just so much energy. There's so much talk. There's so much going on. And it's just really great to be a part of the whole experience, man. It's really great.
You got not a one night, but a 2-night 74th anniversary event. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what match you're most excited about?
Ooh, now that's a hard call. I think you always have to go for the main event. And I mean, we got two big powerhouses. I mean, this is going to be a battle of the super heavyweights. You got Trevor Murdoch, our NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. I mean, for folks that are fans of the NWA, they may remember it was last year at the Chase in St. Louis in his hometown. He defeated Nick Aldis to become the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. He lost that title to Matt Cardona. He ended up winning it back after Cardona's injury. And now Tyrus has been put into the mix, our current television champion. All I'm seeing every day is just videos and pictures of these guys working out, getting stronger, getting bigger, if people can believe that. I mean, it's going to be, if I'm doing some quick math here, it's about 700 pounds of athlete just in that main event on night 2. So, I mean, that's what really kind of, I think, sets the NWA apart, is when we got like some heavyweight wrestlers. I mean, we got some heavyweight wrestlers. And so that's going to be really exciting. But this card is stacked top to bottom. I mean, it could not really be much better. We've got so many great matches. We just recently announced that Davey Richards is going to be defending the MLW championship on this program, on the pay-per-view as well. So it shows the relationships that NWA has with a bunch of other promotions out there. We're doing so much stuff. We've got legends that are coming in with Barry Windham, JJ Dillon, Baby Doll, and so much more that's happening. It's going to be a really big weekend. I think what people don't understand is, people might think that, we're returning to the Chase, but our anniversary shows is basically like the NWA's version of WrestleMania. That's why we're having 2 days. That's why we're having these big fan fests where people are going to go and be able to talk to Tyrus, buy his book, get that book signed, or meet a lot of our champions, meet a lot of our legends that are going to be there. It's really a whole party weekend experience. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is just meeting the fans, our dedicated fans, and then maybe some of the new fans that have recently come along. Then just fill up that Chase, the Coruscant Ballroom inside the Chase, which has had so much history too. That's a great part about being with the NWA. It's this level of history that we have. I mean, there was wrestling that was shot and for television inside that ballroom starting in the 1950s. And then, of course, that fell apart and that hotel went under new management, and we were able to kickstart things last year, and now it's just growing and growing and growing, and it's really, really cool. I can't wait to get back to St. Louis.
We had the pleasure of talking to Trevor Murdoch a couple months ago before he regained the NWA World Championship, and he was talking about how much just the history of the championship of the promotion means to him. And he said everybody in that locker room takes it seriously. They don't look at it as like, okay, this is a reboot. We're like, no, they look at it as the NWA. So do you feel that way in commentary as well, that like, okay, this isn't just, okay, I'm doing a cool thing, I'm living my dream, but no, this is the National Wrestling freaking Alliance that I grew up watching?
Yeah, you really have to have that reverence for it. I think that's really important. And I think that's what our fans expect. We don't just have a belt that some guy has and he says he's world champion. Our championship has a lineage that goes back to the 40s. And not only with our men's championship, but also our women's championship. I mean, we call the current NWA Women's World Championship the Burke because of the illustrious career of Mildred Burke. And think about that. I mean, she was wrestling women and men back in the 30s, the 40s, and throughout that time there. And really during a time, especially when you look back through all the wars that, World War II and all the other wars that we participated in, at a certain point, the women were really carrying the sport of professional wrestling during those years. And a lot of people don't talk about that. Of course, we've got this great surge in women's wrestling today, which the NWA, I believe, is at the forefront with not only our women's championship, but also our women's tag team championship, and soon to be our women's television championship. And not only that, we have a female voice on our commentary team in Velvet Sky, being a former champion there. But that focus, I mean, it's something that's been a part of the NWA since the very, very beginning, and we're continuing that tradition on now, and it's really skyrocketing. And one of the reasons it's able to do that is because that's what the fans want. That's what the market is asking for. They're seeing our competition like AEW and WWE, and they're having their women's matches as main events for big pay-per-views and things like that. And so that's what people want to see. And the advantage that we have in the NWA is we have pretty much this open door policy, which allows us to bring in some amazing competitors to challenge for that NWA World Women's Championship, and not only have it on our programming, but in the tradition of the National Wrestling Alliance. These titles, they travel the world, and Camille's done a great job of taking that championship overseas, defending it multiple times, defending on some of our friends' programming, some of the smaller promotions programming. And so it's really great to see that we're able to grow. And I like to think that a rising tide lifts all ships. And so with the NWA being there and kind of being this focal point where we could help the entire industry, the entire sport of professional wrestling get better and better, and then celebrate that on our biggest show of the year over 2 nights at the Chase, August 27th and 28th. I mean, tickets are going fast. The pay-per-view buy rates are already great, and I'm just excited. I really can't wait to get there. It's hard to sleep at night sometimes.
It's just so surreal. I remember years ago, I was talking to Jim Ross, and he's like, all these promotions would benefit if they worked together. And now, and fast forward all these years later, it's finally happened. We see AEW bringing a lot of talent. MLW and NWA seem to have a great relationship as well. Impact Wrestling and everything else. As a fan who has witnessed kind of like the competition over time, and some of the pettiness on all the different sides, does it kind of surprise you how receptive and open NWA and other promotions are to working together, or do you feel like it's just at this point a necessity given what the fans are demanding?
I think the fans have really pushed that a lot, but I also think that a lot of promoters out there have really seen, in all honesty, they've seen the money in it, and that's going to motivate anybody to do anything. So if you see the money in something, that's going to make you want to go ahead and take that step that maybe traditionally they might have been more hesitant to do so. So you're seeing promotions. I mean, we recently on Billy Corgan owning the National Wrestling Alliance, when he's touring with the Smashing Pumpkins, he's down playing in Mexico City. All of a sudden, he's having meetings with the president of AAA. And so, there's going to be a door that's open there. And then we've seen La Rebellion, our former NWA World Tag Team Champions. They've also had that relationship with a number of other promotions down in Mexico. And so it's not just what we're seeing here with our independent teams and organizations working together. It's also seeing it from an international perspective as well. And I think our friends over at AEW have actually done a really good job at that. You've seen with what they've been able to do with New Japan Pro Wrestling recently with Forbidden Door. And we have a lot of those similar relationships as well. And we've seen that in the past, particularly if you just look a few years back to NWA 70, we had, guys from ROH, we had guys from New Japan, we had people from Impact, we had a whole bunch of different variety of people that were there. And I think it's gotten to a point where people kind of expect it. They're waiting for that match of who's that invader that's going to be coming in, who's that person that's going to come in and really shake things up. And at this point, so far, it's looking like Davey Richards is coming in, which is really great because, he has a lot of ties to the St. Louis area as well. He's going to bring in a big fan base. He's going to bring a lot of the people who like to watch MLW to come and purchase our pay-per-view. And then they'll see our pay-per-view and they'll realize, hey, you know what? I like this NWA stuff. Maybe I'll start watching NWA Power and NWA USA. And, one hand washes the other, and we can all succeed because there's plenty of wrestling out there. There's lots of fans out there that want to spend pretty much their whole time watching wrestling. And with everything going on in the world today, what a better way to entertain yourself than just watching professional wrestling and being involved in these characters and being involved in these situations and the violence and the personalities. I mean, it's really the best form of entertainment that you're going to get to be able to escape everything that's going on in this world. That's why I love pro wrestling, to be quite honest, is you get to go ahead and just sit down, cheer for the good guys, boo the bad guys, or maybe cheer for the bad guys. It all depends on how you're feeling. And the NWA is a great place for us to be able to have that. And, this is wrestling as it's meant to be. We say it a lot. It's in a lot of our advertising. I say it when we toss at the beginning of our episodes of Power in USA, but we really mean it. This is how wrestling is, how it's meant to be. This is what we believe wrestling should be like. And of course, there's going to be different flavors out there and different takes out there, but this is what we believe in, our core values. And it all goes back to the history, legacy, and tradition of the NWA. And that's what we hold on near and dear to our hearts. And I think that's what fans really get out of it. They want to come along for that ride, and they want to enjoy, for a lack of a better term, that nostalgia factor too. And that's what's so great about being a part of this organization.
Of course, you can check out NWA 74. Order both nights on pay-per-view on Fite. Check it out on the Fite app and on the Fite website. And we'll get back to NWA 74. But my friend, I love your Twitter bio here. recovering TV journalist. Kind of funny. You do a fantastic job with the NWA, but you weren't always a wrestling commentator. This journey had to start somewhere. So how did your wrestling fandom come to be, and how'd you end up in the NWA?
Well, it's interesting because I had for a long time 2 careers running simultaneously. And one was in broadcast journalism, where I was for over a decade a local news reporter for various stations throughout the United States. I worked for 5 different stations. And then at the same time, I was always either involved in wrestling as an independent wrestler myself, very, very early on, much different than what I am today. I am not in the shape that I should be for that. But I was able to transition into broadcasting. And so that's been a really wild ride to be able to go on. And especially for me to have the ability to do them both simultaneously is really cool. But, my love for wrestling, like most people, it kind of just comes from being a kid, sitting in front of the TV, watching it. I was, just talking with somebody today earlier about, I vividly remember the first episode of SmackDown when it aired on UPN back in the day. And we were watching it on a TV in my living room. And I vividly remember it because it was one of those old TV that still had like the wood finish around it. You remember those? Like that's what was dating my family and myself. And so I remember watching that episode of SmackDown, and I remember being involved in or really into like all the Attitude Era stuff with, The Rock and Stone Cold and stuff like that. But later on, getting more involved in professional wrestling and really getting into it, you start looking at a lot of the other things and a lot of the stuff that, I wasn't raised on just because I didn't know. And, without the internet, I probably wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have been able to watch all the great matches with, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and all these other NWA greats from, Georgia Championship Wrestling, Crockett Promotions, the list goes on and on. Memphis especially is always great to watch, what King was able to do down there. So it's really been able to evolve, and I've been able to absorb so much over the years. And it was really cool to be able to do 2 things simultaneously. So I've, have my regular job, reporting news Monday through Friday. I'm live at the shooting, I'm at the hurricane, I'm at the house fire. But then I'd use my vacation days and my weekends to do wrestling. And thankfully for me, I had really, I think news directors understood what television ratings are. And it was really easy for me to like be able to, especially when I worked for places that were Fox affiliates and SmackDown's on Fox. It's like, well, you can't be mad at me for doing wrestling because our lead in for our news is SmackDown. So if you hate that, we can't have that sort of relationship in television. So it was always good for me to be able to have that option and that availability to be able to do that. And they were really sympathetic at my last place where I worked because it was a Sinclair owned broadcast station. And for the longest time, up until recently, Sinclair owned Ring of Honor. And so I was able to kind of, negotiate like, hey, this is definitely something that would probably violate a contract for a lot of other people, but this is so different. I want to be allowed to do it. And they let me do it. And I've been able to succeed and make myself to this point where I have now become the voice of the National Wrestling Alliance. I've been doing that for over 5 years. I like to think of myself as one of the longest running employees in the Lightning One era because it started with him purchasing it, which means Tim Storm, our NWA World's Heavyweight Champion at the time, was employee number 2. His challenger, Nick Aldis, was employee number 3, and then it was me. So, I've been around the whole time with Billy Corgan, watching this grow, watching it develop, and being at the forefront of all this change that we've been able to push into the market and to be able to develop to the point to where we're having 6 pay-per-views a year. We have 2 shows a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays with Power, Saturdays with NWA USA. Some of our clips and our videos that we post to YouTube, that's where a lot of the world watches us, and we're getting, 200,000 views, 300,000 views on these episodes. And so we're definitely something out there, and people are watching and people are talking about it. And it's really cool to be a part of that and be a part of, I believe there's a lot of younger folks out there that are kind of just getting into wrestling. And for them to be in that same sort of scenario where I was sitting on that carpet watching The Rock on SmackDown, if I could have that same sort of connection with another child that has their iPad open to YouTube and they're watching Trevor Murdoch versus Tyrus, I mean, that's really cool. And something that I hope that I don't take for granted, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, man. You're living the dream, and it's great to hear. Now, we always like to ask our guests some kind of random and rapid fire questions just to get to know them better. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready. Let's rock and roll. Hit me with anything.
All right. Favorite late night snack or cheat meal?
Peanut butter filled pretzels. Delicious, salty, a little sweet, good. Okay, but go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, no, salty. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
pleasure.
I see you got some ink there. Any meaning behind that tattoo?
Oh yeah, it's a penguin that's a Grim Reaper. When you're 18 years old, you think you've got all the best ideas in the world and things are going to be cool forever. It's starting to fade now. I really need to have it touched up. But my reason for getting this is I always loved penguins. They're my favorite animal. So I don't know if that steps on one of your questions, but I was like, nobody has a Grim Reaper penguin tattoo on them, and people just think it's a plague mask. Which then COVID happens, and it's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But it's fun. I think I got to add more. I think about maybe having an ice theme on this arm and a fire theme on the other arm. But I'm very indecisive, so it's really been a struggle to try to think of new tattoo ideas I want to do.
Hey, well, if anybody that's watching or listening has tattoo ideas for Joe, just
Please
send
them my way. Send them my way.
All-time favorite wrestler.
I'm gonna go, and it's hard because I have such a personal connection with so many of the people that I work with now, guys that I've been working with for a long time, like Tim Storm, like Trevor Murdoch, but I'm gonna go a little bit further back, and I'm gonna pick somebody that had so much importance with the NWA, and that's Harley Race. 8-time NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, just a genuinely tough SOB that nobody would want to mess with, one of the best wrestlers to ever do it. And without Harley Race, you wouldn't be having guys like your Nick Aldis's, like your Trevor Murdoch's, like your Aaron Stevens, that those people wouldn't exist in the world today if it wasn't for Harley Race. So I'm going to go Harley Race.
There you go. And I'm glad you said that because he was also a hell of a trainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we wouldn't be having Trevor Murdoch as a world heavyweight champion without Harley Race. I tell you that right now.
How inspiring is it to see his career resurgence? For anybody that maybe kind of started getting into NWA the last couple of years, they may be like, wow, Trevor Murdoch's still wrestling. And he kind of went through a low period and he talked about it in our interview. And fast forward a few years later, winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, then winning it again. I mean, nothing short of inspiring, right?
No, it absolutely is. It proves that if you're passionate about something, if you have a certain level of talent, but even more than that, if you have dedication to something, you can do anything in this world. And I think that Trevor is a shining example because we've seen so many people that went through the WWF, WWE machine. They got their shot, shined for 15 minutes. Then, the playbook changed, whatever changed, and then they just disappeared into the ether. But if you're really passionate about this business, about the sport, and you're going to push yourself and to maybe boundaries that you feel uncomfortable with and continue to stay in the game, you can accomplish a lot and you become a world champion that people want to see. And Trevor Murdoch is absolutely proof of that.
I know this is a really hard one, but can you narrow it down to maybe one or two favorite matches that you've called?
I get this question a lot, and I really should take a moment and really dive in deep to give a better answer. But I have a couple that really do stand out. One was on an episode of NWA Power when the Rock and Roll Express won the NWA World Tag Team Championships for arguably the 9th time. If you talk to Ricky, sometimes that number moves a little bit as to how many times they've actually been tag champions. But as far as we consider, I think we consider it the 9th reign of the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, it's something that nobody would ever think would have happened. But, Ricky Morton especially, he's still wrestling. We're going to be seeing him at NWA 74. And, we've seen it in past. I mean, this guy's doing Canadian destroyers and stuff to people. And I'm like, dude, aren't you pushing 70? What is going on here? So I think that is a paramount one there. And to go back to what we see at the Chase, I mean, I think, to kind of double down on what we're going to perhaps see this year, another one of my favorite matches was Trevor Murdoch versus Nick Aldis last year for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship because it went everywhere. It was brutal. Tables were broken. They fought on the stage. They fought in the ring. Trevor's family was there there. He wins the championship in front of his home crowd. He's bleeding. The whole crowd's on their feet. I mean, just the emotion and everything attached to it was so incredible, and that building was just rocking for it. And so if I had to pick two, I think I would go with those two.
Hey, those are definitely some great choices. Most awkward moment as a commentator.
Oh man, sometimes you just flub. I remember one time way early on before I was with NWA, there was, you always talk about the torque in the neck, but for some reason my mouth couldn't get the word torque out and it came out twerk. And it was like repeatedly, like, I don't know what, there was like something like like the needle was skipping in my brain. And like my commentary partner at the time, Johnny LaQuasto, who you may remember from a short time with WWE. He's working a bunch of indie shows now. He's like, why do you keep saying twerk? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know. So that's definitely one of the more awkward things. But it's the other thing too, when you're, and I'm sure, Fred, you know this, when your job is to talk for a living, at some point you're going to hit a speed bump, that's all you do. And it's all recorded, and all people do is go back and make gifs and make fun of you. At some point you're going to mess up and say something ridiculous and dumb.
Oh yeah, that has definitely occurred many times over. Yeah, you get to a point where sometimes you say things stupid, or you mispronounce something, or you say something and you're like, wait, did I really pronounce it that way? What did I say? And then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that one should have stayed in the drafts. Exactly. Hey, you just keep rolling with it.
We're only human, Fred. We're only human.
There you go. And in relation to that, what's the biggest lesson you've learned as a commentator?
Now that's actually a really good question. I don't think I've been asked that one before. So hats off to you, Fred, for that. I think the thing that makes a commentator so successful, and what I've learned over my years of doing it, is one, you have to do your homework. So you know everything that you need to be able to cover, basically, your dates of like this championship was won then, this person's this anytime champion, all that, blah, blah, blah. But I think the thing that's actually more important is living in the moment and really being able to react to what you're seeing, and not think too far ahead and not think too far back, but just to kind of be in that space. And I think a lot of people are searching for that in their personal lives, especially, post-COVID and even during COVID, people were looking for ways to center themselves and focus and find themselves doing something that puts them into just that space, and everything else in your life kind of gets pushed to the side. It gets pushed out, and you could just kind of be completely centered on one thing. And so to be able to do that, I think that's what really makes it a successful broadcast, as from my perspective, is when we're just reacting. And then it's almost like playing jazz live. There's just that feeling, that emotion, the rhythm that goes with it. And if the match is hot and the crowd's hot, and then you're matching that level, the people watching at home are going to be on the edge of their seat. And that's what you want. You want people on the edge of their seat, and you don't want them to change the channel. And as long as you could do that, you've succeeded in basically all of television, if you look at it that way. And that's the same goes for wrestling. So that's what really is, just kind of live in the moment and enjoy that moment, and to be a fan. That's the other thing too. I think a lot of people out there might watch some wrestling out there where they've got a commentator that kind of got hired onto a job because, they're, popular, or they have a different sort of sports background. But if they're not super into wrestling, you kind of feel it, and you want to be able to be there, and you want to because if you're passionate about it, like, why isn't this guy passionate about it? Like, where's it? Just there's a disconnect, and so you want to be able to make that connection.
Very well said. I absolutely love that. And you're talking about, of course, getting people's attention, having fans watch their product and everything else. You've got a lot of established talent who's been around the block, to say the very least, but you've got some awesome young talent as well. Are there any underrated talents or talents we should look out for that you'd like to shout out?
There's several. I think that especially on our roster, we have an incredible roster of people, and it's other people are noticing. As we're recording this interview, later on, a woman who's challenged for the NWA World Women's Championship, Kylan King, is going to be featured on AEW because they know she's good. She's fantastic. I've seen her grow, over the years on the independent scene. And now to be coming into the NWA, and now to be, going to AEW to work there as well. It's incredible to have that there. We have such an incredible, diverse group of pro wrestlers, especially since we introduced our junior heavyweight championship. And we're seeing a lot in that group there. Your guys like Colby Carino, son of the great Steve Carino, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You've got Kerry Morton, the son of Ricky Morton. And you got these guys, they're cruiserweights with huge shoes to fill, because look who their dad is, look who their grandparent is. There's this huge lineage. And to see them on that journey and to be taking those first few steps with us is incredible. And I hope people come to us at 74 and for Power and USA to be able to see that and to be able to go on that ride with a lot of our younger talent that's there. Also, people like Kenzie Page and Ella Envy, our current NWA women's tag team champions, and they'll be defending those championships against the Hex in a Kings Highway street fight. So if you want to see tag team wrestling street fight, that's going to go bananas inside the Chase, because there's a lot of heat between those ladies there. But I mean, Kenzie Page, I believe she's 21 years old, and look at what she's been able to accomplish in this sport of professional wrestling. And that's just through hard work, dedication, and talent. Just being able to see them. And then, it's not just our wrestlers that are, shining stars as well. I think our entire broadcast team as well. A lot of people may have known Mae Valentine as, a rock and roll reporter and a model, but she's been our backstage interviewer for years now, and she's fantastic. And now everyone's reaching out. Everybody wants, a shot with Mae Valentine. So I just to see that grow. Kyle Davis, who's been a part of, wrestling for years, way back in ROH, but really coming to his own as our interviewer inside the arena. It's really general hype man for the NWA. I can't speak highly enough for our broadcast team. Our team's probably smaller by person when you compare it to a lot of other people, but everyone that we bring in is incredibly talented and great at what they do. And so that also helps the show and elevates the show itself. So it's not just our young up and coming wrestlers, our veterans that are there, but our broadcast team, all the way down to our camera guys and everybody there. We have just an amazing crew to try to make something very, very special every time we're doing a show, whether that's one of our pay-per-views like NWA 74, or even just our television tapings when we're going to be, it's great that we're going to have this huge weekend. And then 3 days, the 3 day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after, we're in Nashville and we're doing NWA Power and NWA USA tapings. So it's just 5 days of wrestling with this whole wrestling family. And I really can't wait for it. And, it's exciting to go back into a studio because it's so intimate. And it's so different than what normally people see when wrestling, because they watch and everyone's in the big arenas, like basketball arenas and whatnot. But studio wrestling's so special, and it's so unique in the way that you have a feel to it. And almost every person in that audience has their own voice, and it makes for very, very interesting television.
And most certainly does. Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you give for success?
Be patient. I think that's a big problem that some people have is be patient and be available. Especially in the sport of professional wrestling, so much of it comes down to just showing up and saying, can I help you? And you could do that with any industry out there. Anybody out there that wants to do anything, if you want to be in advertising, or if you want to even be a construction mogul and you don't know where to start, maybe you don't have the connection. I certainly didn't. No one in my family ever worked in television. I had no one to guide me to do that, but it was something that I was passionate about. And the only reason that I was successful is because I was open to being trained. I was listening. I was patient. And I just, kept showing up and say, can I help you? And a lot of times that means you're working for free. And a lot of times that means, you're traveling for free, and it actually costs you money to go and do something. When I was going and working championship wrestling from Hollywood for a number of years, which is still airs in the Los Angeles area, I was driving from Palm Springs to where they were filming in Ventura County. And, that drive, that was the gas money to get there, was basically what I got paid. And so I was basically doing it for free at that point. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be working full time with the NWA and talking to Fred. So, it's one of those things of like, you just kind of have to keep grinding, be patient, and don't give up. It's really, I guess John Cena probably has the best sayings ever, doesn't he? There's a reason for that. But you could see me. You could definitely see me.
Awesome. Wise words from a man that's definitely been successful at it. And hey, congrats on all your success and your continued success, the NWA success. We'll get you out of here on another high note. Why should fans watch NWA 74?
Look, this is the NWA's biggest show of the year. This is basically our version of WrestleMania. All of our championships are on the line. We have all of these wrestling legends that don't really come out very often, especially to different shows, but they know our brand. They know how special we are. And the look and the feel of this show is going to be different than any of the other wrestling that you're watching right now. It's going to be, the flavor is just going to be so different for you. And at the same time, you know, we call our tagline, as I said before, is wrestling as it's meant to be. So just it's worth the investment. If you want to be part of our all access pass, $49.99, that gets you first run of all of our programming and all of our pay-per-views throughout the whole year. It's the best deal in the entire wrestling / sports entertainment business. And I want you to be a part of it. And I guarantee you it's going to be well worth your money for that. And we are just getting started, Fred. I think what a lot of people don't know is what's next for the NWA, and that's a very rapid expansion with several more live dates, several more towns that we're going to be hitting. We're going to have some pretty big announcements coming up, and you want to be at the forefront of that. You want to see where it all started. You want to see where it's all continuing to gain that momentum, and that means you got to tune in to NWA 74, August 27th and 28th. And if you're in the St. Louis area, tickets are still on sale. Just go to nwatix.com. We want to fill up the chase. We want to have the fire marshal get mad at us like they did last year because maybe we had one too many people. But, you know, we want to have that same vibe that's there. So if you're passionate about wrestling, we definitely want to see you there. And on top of that, I just want to give a quick thing out here. You know, not only are we trying to go places and make money and have wrestling, but the NWAs, we've been trying to really help out a lot of these communities we've been going to as well. So through our NWA outreach program. So we're offering several free tickets to veterans and their families, current military and their families. And also we try to go to every children's hospital in every place that we go to. So we have our champions that are going to go visit at the St. Louis Children's Hospital, which is right down the street from the Chase where we're having the show. We're going to visit with some kids that might not be able to make the show and still kind of make their day. And I think that's really important with what we're doing in the NWA is not only are we going out to these places and we're growing, but we're trying to really help those that could use something, some free entertainment, some fun entertainment, and to just kind of bring everybody along and watch us grow with the National Wrestling Alliance.
That is fantastic, and all great reasons to attend NWA events, to attend NWA 74. And if you can't make it there in St. Louis, to order NWA 74 on Fite. 2-night event, August 27th and the 28th. Joe, I can't thank you enough for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, learning about your journey. Before we let you go, where can we find you online?
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me at Joe Galli News. I wonder if I should change that to wrestling at this point. It's too late. I got the check mark. I don't want to risk losing it. You can also find me on Instagram at Joe Galli. That's pretty much all I really use. I'm starting to use TikTok, but maybe, Fred, I'm just too old. I can't. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm struggling here. I'm struggling.
But listen, there's always time, my friend. There's always time.
There's always time. There's always another skill. So find me on TikTok at Joe Galli.